Let's jump right into this. We're looking at a truly fascinating text today for this explainer, a source that suggests our modern systems are actively suppressing human frequency, and that our standard understanding of the mind is, well, fundamentally incomplete. We are talking about the metaphysics of the mind, frequency harmonics, and ultimately how to unplug from what the author describes as the modern matrix.
So, I've got to ask, are you using all 7 of your senses? Now you might be thinking, wait, 7? But the author of this text argues that human schooling and standard science essentially function as a beta trap. It's a trap designed to lock us out of our multidimensional awareness, keeping our brain waves shallow, and basically leaving us to wonder if we are blindly navigating reality. Let's unpack exactly how that happens. Section 1. Limits of modern schooling. Let's quickly trace exactly where these systems actually came from. The source text actually traces our entire modern education system straight back to the 19th century Prussian factory model. And look, it wasn't designed to cultivate self-actualized, multidimensional humans. It was literally explicitly designed to churn out obedient workers who respond to ringing bells, just like a factory. The author contrasts this standard reductionist view, treating the brain as this isolated machine with only 5 physical senses navigating a dead world, against a much more expansive reality. This alternative view sees the brain as a massive antenna for consciousness, utilizing 7 complete sensory gateways that communicate directly with the Earth's electromagnetic field. It's a totally different paradigm. Moving on to Section 2, 7 frequencies of mind. Let's map out this hidden architecture to see what the text claims we're missing out on. According to the text, the modern world basically keeps us locked in a constant state of high beta stress. It's like a digital jammer, intentionally blocking out our deeper, more intuitive and creative brainwaves like theta and gamma. The text maps this all out using what it calls the law of octaves. It's fascinating. You look at our lowest foundational brainwaves, like delta, and those correspond to the root chakra and red light, acting as our deep subconscious anchor for survival and physical healing. Then as you move up the chart, through alpha and beta, you eventually hit these hyperfast lambda waves that nest perfectly with ultra-slow epsilon waves right at the violet crown. It represents a state of total, holistic brain integration and transcendence. Section 3. The 7 human senses are actual anchors of reality. So, the source frames these specific brainwaves as biological mirrors to our sensory systems. It argues that traditional science is essentially leaving out the master keys to our internal sovereignty. We're not just working with 5 senses here. The text outlines 7 core systems required to truly anchor our consciousness. Think about how you balance on 2 feet. That is your vestibular inner ear gyroscope aligning with gravity. We've also got interoception for deep internal bodily awareness, and proprioception giving us spatial boundaries. Then there's the central soma sensation bridge, basically our sense of touch and heart coherence. And finally, we have 3 higher frequency decoders: chemical resonance, which decodes molecules via smell and taste, audio location for mapping spatial frequencies, and photoreception, or visual sight, which the text describes as the ultimate quantum wave collapse. Now, the really crucial point here is how these senses adapt through a process called cortical reallocation. The underlying idea is that the one conscious observer never actually loses data. If a physical portal closes, say you lose your sight, consciousness just routes that incoming data through a different lens. For example, a blind person using echolocation is physically routing auditory data straight into their visual cortex. They literally see the geometric layout of a room using sound. The mind never stays in the dark, it just reallocates. Section 4. Reframing the autistic experience, focusing on sensory recalibration. This brings us to a really major theme in the text. It reframes the autistic experience not as a medical deficit, but as this profound, hyperacute recalibration of the human sensory instrument. The text draws a sharp contrast here. On one hand, you have the scattered multitasking of a neurotypical brain, which relies on shallow beta waves to just lightly skim across maybe 10 things at once. On the other hand, you have the hypercoherent theta-gamma laser focus of an autistic mind, diving incredibly deep into just one single subject. And this deep dive, it's called monotopism. It pulls the entire conscious spotlight into one singular, intensely focused channel, completely bypassing those standard shallow beta filters. Because of this absolute hypertuning, the source makes a really compelling argument. Autistic meltdowns aren't behavioral deficits at all. Actually, they are a biological defense mechanism. It's the heart torus, the body's electromagnetic energy field, violently contracting to shield an overloaded nervous system. Imagine your sensory dials being naturally locked at an 11 in a world that is already way too loud. That's what's happening here. Furthermore, the text completely reframes stimming, behaviors like hand flapping or rocking. Instead of treating it as a symptom that needs to be suppressed, it's presented as a brilliant, self-regulating biological hack. By manually generating these rhythmic, high-frequency physical pulses, the person is literally forcing fluid through their inner ear canals. They are artificially anchoring their avatar to Earth's gravity when their vestibular gyroscope feels totally chaotic or muted. It's a powerful grounding mechanism. All right, Section 5, the matrix of overstimulation, which naturally leads us to a broader societal issue that honestly affects all of us. The author provocatively claims that the architects of our modern technological matrix are intentionally using mass media and artificial diets to disrupt human frequency, to basically harvest our attention. The text uses the 2008 cartoon WALL-E as a literal blueprint of this digital trap. Think about those humans on the Axiom ship, right? Trapped in floating hover chairs, fed a constant stream of dopamine. The author suggests this results in an inverted energy field and atrophied roots, and that they're hiding this dark truth right in plain sight, inside a children's movie, using the law of permission to gain our implied consent. So how do they do it? The source explains exactly how screens capture us through a technique called photic driving. Modern media uses these rapid-fire frame cuts, flashing contrasting colors literally every couple of seconds. This creates a high beta visual shock that completely exhausts your analytical prefrontal cortex. And once that's exhausted, boom, the brain plunges right into a passive, highly suggestible theta trance state. The programming slips right past your conscious filters. If you have ever felt like a complete zombie after an hour of scrolling short-form videos, well, this is the exact mechanism the author is describing. And it doesn't stop at screens, it's a multi-pronged sensory assault. When you combine that artificial photic driving with things like red 40 petroleum dyes, which the text says trigger high beta panic, and refined sugars that actually alter your inner ear fluid to cause spatial disorientation, the author states you are completely dysregulating your internal gyroscope. Throw in narrow spectrum artificial lights and you are pushing a hyperacute nervous system into absolute systemic sensory overload. Section 6, harmonizing with nature's blueprint and clearing the static. So, the big question, how do we actually fix this and protect our frequency? Instead of just relying on synthetic pharmaceuticals to numb the overload, the text proposes what it calls an alchemical balance to return our biological avatar to its organic resonance. It presents these really powerful vibrational anchors. For example, if you need to ground a chaotic high beta state, it suggests using vetiver essential oil for a limbic reset, drinking burdock root tea to tone your nervous system, and even using the iron-rich trigonal lattice of a black tourmaline crystal as a literal lightning rod for all that excess electrical static. The text also points out this flawless cosmic coincidence involving the number 400. The sun is exactly 400 times larger than the moon, sure, but it's also exactly 400 times further away from Earth, which is what allows for a perfect total solar eclipse. The author argues that this macrocosmic geometry perfectly mirrors our internal architecture. Our massive heart torus field has to align with and gently eclipse our smaller analytical brain torus field to achieve true internal coherence and stillness. Which brings us to this incredibly powerful quote from the text. When you look at nature with absolute, hyper-focused presence, nature looks back at you. The claim here is that by stepping away from our dead digital boxes and actually observing the continuous harmonic spectrum of sunlight, trees, and the earth, we engage in the ultimate quantum loop, the observer observed. We're literally pulling reality out of a state of infinite possibilities and collapsing it into a healing physical presence. Ultimately, this explainer leaves us with a critical, life-altering question. Are you a passive consumer of a low-frequency world? Or are you the conscious creator actively collapsing the quantum wave? We really have to ask ourselves if we're going to remain trapped in the floating hover chairs of the modern matrix, or if we're finally going to unplug, harmonize all 7 of our senses, and reclaim our sovereign role as the architects of our own reality. It's an absolutely incredible lens to view our world through, and definitely something to think about the next time you find yourself staring at a screen.